purpose is a very deep subject that is dear to my heart, and it reminds me of Daddy Janki, who was the administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris for several years, decades even, and she used to speak a lot using this expression, the purpose of my life. And she was always very conscious of the purpose of her life. And I noticed that you mentioned that I did take up the spiritual life after having started out in media. And you know, the reason why I went into media is because as a young person I was very keen on making my life meaningful and worthwhile. And my life was not purely for the sake of just getting a job, creating money, and leading a regular, normal life. I always had this feeling that my life was not for that. And anytime anyone would say to me, you know, your life will be like this and like that, and you'll get married and have a family and all this, and I always used to feel, no, I have some other purpose, some, maybe you can call it a higher purpose. But it wasn't completely clear to me what that was. And when I was in my early 20s, I started to feel the pull of spirituality. And then when I came across Raj Yoga, it spoke to me. And I felt that to achieve a worthwhile life on the basis of spiritual principles and practice corresponded really to who I am and what I am. I think there are two things that people feel. One is a sense of destiny. And many people who I meet and ask about this, they say they know they have a destiny, and they also say that where they are at the moment and what their destiny is quite different, because the destiny is at a higher level than where we are now. So I think that the choice to make one's life meaningful and purposeful is also a choice that says to the self, I need to work on myself and bring myself up to the level that corresponds with my destined purpose. And in the process of doing that, you begin to discern what your purpose is and to feel it and to articulate it. The power of purpose is important because if you do not have a sense of purpose and put your willpower behind it, then that purpose remains something like just a nice idea, which will never actually come to fruition. So we have to balance this feeling of there being a destiny with the power of the will. And willpower is a very interesting concept when you look at it in terms of spiritual practice. The will is part of consciousness, and consciousness is very subtle, very mysterious. It is as mysterious as life itself. And in spiritual practice, we are all the time thinking about what exactly is my soul, my spirit, my existence, my consciousness, what it is, And then what is it for? Because we do feel, I think everybody feels, we've been placed on this earth for some reason. We're not just here for nothing. There is some reason why I'm here. There is something that I need to fulfill. And I have to put my willpower behind it. Many people, however, do experience that the will is not as strong as we would like it to be. And there is a saying, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's a saying that comes from Christianity, but I'm sure something equivalent is there in most of the spiritual and religious traditions. How do we make the will strong? I think it's connected with developing our inner life. And the inner life is the life of the heart, the life of the soul. We live on multiple levels, obviously. We have our family life, we have our professional life, we have our community life, but we also have our inner life. And our inner life is probably the deepest and the most private aspect of ourself, which sometimes we will share with people who we feel are close to us, who we feel are motivated in the same way as we are, who we discern also have a higher purpose, and with whom we resonate. And I think resonance is a very important concept also. Each one of us, first of all, needs to come into harmony with the self. And yesterday I was talking to a gathering of people and asking them what is the percentage to which they feel in harmony with their life as it is right now. And it was a big range, all the way from 20% in harmony to 90% in harmony. But no one was 100%. And I think we need to create a balance between our normal, everyday, regular life, which is necessary. We're part of the world, part of society, and we have our social duties, our professional duties, and then we have something else, which is connected with our higher purpose, and which is our heart, deep in our heart. And this is that driving force that we need to connect our will to. And I was listening to a documentary a few days ago, and in that it picked up a statement from the philosopher Novalis, which said that our purpose is we're always going home. We're going back to our origins. We're going to the source, to the higher being, it's a return to the Supreme Being, to God. And that is why we live. We live for that higher dimension, but then we want to balance that with what is possible for us here in this regular, ordinary, worldly life. So the will is part of our being, and the will is strong when our being is connected to the Supreme Being. Our will becomes weak when we act against our conscience. And so I found that there is a deep connection between living according to our conscience and cultivating a powerful will. And the reason we cultivate a powerful will is so that we can give that energy and that force to fulfill our higher purpose. So let us go to this dilemma that all of us do experience, and that is the dilemma of living according to the voice of conscience. Sometimes we can say the voice of conscience corresponds to our intellectual understanding of what is right and wrong. But the voice of conscience is also the voice of the heart, because the heart knows what's right and what's wrong. And situations arise from time to time through the days. Some are simple, some are very complex and difficult. But when we are close to our heart, and we're also close to our understanding of what is real and true and worthwhile, then we know what to do. And when we live like this, then the will becomes strengthened over time. And as we discern our higher purpose, then we have that energy of the purified will to move, to drive us to fulfilling our higher purpose. I think in many cases our higher purpose is very subtle and quite difficult to articulate. I think many of us, we have ideals about how the world should be, how people should be, how life should be, and then we experience many disappointments as we see that the world is not what we hoped for, and there is a lot of human suffering, there is injustice, there is pain in this world. And it is not possible for any one of us to take on that big task of making the world a better place. But each one of us puts our little finger in whatever way we can to accomplishing some of our ideals. And we may achieve something noteworthy, or our achievements may be quite simple and not recognized by the world at all. But that doesn't really matter. I think what matters is for us to be close to fulfilling why we think we are here. And to love is a very important part of our higher purpose. So let us look a little bit at what is love. When I was hearing this statement from Novalis about, you're always going home, you're always going back to your origins. And I think many of us feel that we originate from the Supreme Being, and we will ultimately return, and that everyone has an eternal connection with that higher being, higher power, and what that one stands for. It is not possible for a mere human being to make that much of a difference in this world. But a mere human being connected with your conscience and connected with the Supreme Being and motivated by love for your brothers and sisters in this world, then what you will do will be right, and the accumulation of what you will do will be a power which is right, which is beautiful, and at the end of your days you will feel that you have done the best that you could do in this life, in this world. And I think it's very important to do things just little by little. A few people have in their destiny to do something great, something that is well known and recognized by the world. But there are many great things that are quiet and secret and only known by the one who is doing it, and maybe someone who sees it or feels it or experiences it. But the most important purpose, I think, is to be true to the self. And being true to the self has everything to do with living life according to the guiding feelings from the heart, according to the voice of conscience. Because then your heart is light and you feel free. And for me, freedom is a very important motivation, and I am a person who needs to feel free. And it is said in spiritual study that the bondages which take you away from your freedom are all connected with the times when you went against the voice of your heart and against the voice of your conscience. Of course, there is the voice of the world, the voice of society, which tells us this is the right way to be, these are the important things to pay attention to. And all of this has to do with our worldly duties and responsibilities and how we perform in our current roles. But behind that, I think it's always discernible that the deep purpose is to be true to myself, to be true to what I stand for, to be true to desiring to be near to the Supreme Being, who is the intelligence of the universe, who is, we feel, watching us, grading us. Life is a university, and in the school of life there are many tests, many temptations, many things which are difficult. Sometimes you find yourself in ethical dilemmas. Is it right to do this? Is it right to do that? Out of these two right things, which is the better one? Or some ethical dilemmas are, it is wrong to do this, and it is wrong to not do this. So what will I do? And you're stuck, because if you do it, it's not right. If you don't do it, it's not right. And so you have to put it in the hands of the divine, I suppose. But behind that, the purpose of being true to the self allows, I think, the consequences of the action to produce good fruit, because purpose is connected with action. And if my purpose is to be true to myself, and I come into different circumstances from time to time, many of the circumstances of life are completely outside our control. Sometimes other people will put us into a situation and they are in power over us, and so we have no choice. And we find ourselves forced to do something which we do not like, which is against our conscience, and it wounds the soul. So the wounded soul tries to heal and to return to that essential original purpose of being true to the self. But sometimes also we hear that life is a battleground, and there are so many different kinds of wars: internal wars, family wars, international wars, inter-community wars, many kinds of circumstances of conflict that we find ourselves in, and it is very difficult to know how to conduct oneself in the midst of that conflict, where not only I'm true, but I'm also courageous. Because being true to the self does require courage. It does require a strong heart. And if we have a weak heart, then we would do a weak action. And then we would not be free. And then the conscience would bite. And there would be shame. And so the soul doesn't like to go there. But sometimes life puts one there. And so the quest to be true to the self means that we have to go through and come out the other side of, in a way, atoning for having found oneself in a situation where one had to go against one's better judgment or against one's conscience, because you had no choice, because you had no power. But it is said, that your life begins now. And whatever is the past, let it go. We learn in spiritual practice that if we are limited by the memories of the past, the experiences of the past, then we will not be able to fulfill our purpose. And so it is always said, leave it behind, let it go. It's like a dream. And it doesn't have to be a nightmare that haunts you, but it's just a dream that was there, no doubt. We have to acknowledge the past, but it doesn't have to drive us in the present, and it doesn't have to dictate our future, and it definitely doesn't have to deter us from our purpose. And I think sometimes we're able to feel closer to our purpose when we have come to terms with our failures. I don't think there's anyone who hasn't had a few failures, who hasn't made a bunch of mistakes. So this is the human condition. Even so, this purpose, the purpose of me is to be real, to be so true to myself that my essence is visible in my face, in my eyes. My essence comes through my words and my actions, And if someone doesn't appreciate it or doesn't like me to be real or true, then I have to face that. But I don't have to move away from my purpose. Sometimes people find obstacles, and what do we do with obstacles that stand between ourselves and fulfilling our purpose? There's a few things we can do. We can sit in front of the obstacle, which is not moving. It's like a big mountain. We can't just take a big hammer and start banging away at it, because the hammer is small and the mountain is big, so that's not the way. The way of confronting an obstacle doesn't really work. We need to rise above it. And rising doesn't mean, levitating or something like this. It's to do with raising one's level of consciousness. And I think that is also part of purpose. And when you're really clear about your purpose, that clarity gives you the power to admit to the self that, self, right now, I am too weak to deal with this obstacle, and I will not let myself get disheartened or depressed. I will have patience, and I will raise my level of consciousness. I will raise the level of purity of my heart. I will become more true and more real and more bright. And this will allow me to rise above the appearance of an obstacle, and also to transform this obstacle, because it can be transformed. An obstacle is sometimes something that looks like an obstacle, but is not actually an obstacle. It's a perception. Perception is very powerful, and the way that I perceive what's in front of me determines whether I get past it or get through it or get stopped by it or get put back and fail to understand the nature of the test. But no, the purpose of obstacles, the purpose of tests is really to make us strong and to make us experienced. And all this goes a long way to helping us to actually fulfill our purpose. And what this also does is it increases the strength of the power of the purpose. Because you see clearly that you are being helped by destiny, by the universe, by the divine, because your heart is true, and you know your heart is true. And even if you feel that your purpose is too much or too big, there's also another feeling, and that is that your destiny is anyway fixed. And all you have to do is put one step in front of another, in front of another, and you will reach that aim, that goal, that destiny that corresponds with being absolutely true to the self. But it requires courage. And every time we take a step of courage, what do we experience? 1,000 steps of help. But without a big obstacle, and it can be even an internal obstacle, As I've been speaking, you might have been thinking I'm talking only about external obstacles, and they are the visible ones. But we also have internal obstacles. We do not believe in ourselves. We look at our list of failures, and we look at our list of shortcomings and character defects, our mistakes, and we make a calculation that in view of all this weakness, I cannot achieve my goal. I am not that kind of person. But we cannot make that kind of calculation, because to do that means to be out of contact with one's essence. Because the essence is pure, and the essence is who we really are. And all of the things that have happened to us, or things that have been said to us, or circumstances that have tried to make us give up, they create an internal feeling of I can't make it, I'm not up for it, I'm not really that kind of person, and it creates doubt. So this self-doubt is a big internal block to our purpose. But the power of purpose has to be stronger than the power of self-doubt. So we have to put these two powers in the balance and weigh them. And maybe when we put them in the balance, they look equal. The power of my purpose is strong and the power of my doubt is strong. What is the deciding factor in this? It has to do with faith. Faith in the self. Faith that your destiny is real. Faith that when you're true to yourself, the divine will be behind you and stand by you and help you towards achieving this purpose. Because your own purpose is not just for you alone. Your own purpose is in the context of humanity. It is in the context of a higher vision, not just for the self, but for your brothers and sisters in the world, not just in your country, not just in your religion, not just in your community, but it's broader than that, it's wider than that, because your purpose is to fulfill what it means to be human in little ways, and then sometimes bigger ways. Every time there is an obstacle, it's because your purpose is exceeding the limitation of just your immediate personal self, your immediate personal family. Once you have a purpose that is higher than that, the obstacles come raining down from the outside and also from the inside. And so we have to strive against this doubt that develops inside and see it as something that is not real. It is fear, it is a lack of faith in the self, it is a lack of faith in the meaning of life, and that is a kind of cowardice. So we sit with that doubt and we sit with that weakness and look at it in the eye until we see it for what it is, something false, something illusionary, something that is testing us, and a test is in order to pass. not for the purpose of failing. And so you say to the self, stand up and fight and step forward, step up and fulfill what you are here for, and bring everyone with you, because we are not alone. Sometimes we have to stand in front of the obstacle or the thing which makes us afraid, but at the same time, we are not doing it only for the self. We are doing it to open a doorway, to cut a pathway where many can also walk and experience their freedom, experience their purpose, experience their truth. So this power of purpose is always with us, standing with us, walking with us, and never letting us sit down and give up. No, it is a great power that keeps us putting one step in front of the other, no matter what the obstacles are. Sometimes you feel that you have been working towards your purpose for a long time, many years, and you have grown old and you have grown tired, and still you have not achieved what you think is your purpose. And at such a time, we have to sit down with the self and reevaluate everything. Every so often I do this. I sit down and I analyze myself deeply. Where am I? What am I for? What have I been doing? How have I been using my time, thought, energy? What has it all been for? And am I on track, or have I lost the way, or have I taken another turn or deviated? Where am I? Every few years I will sit down and do this. And whenever you do this, or whenever I do this, I go deep, deep, deep inside myself. And I experience every time that I arrive at the same conclusion. That means I articulate my purpose to myself, and it's always the same purpose. And I look at the pathway along which I have traveled, and I see that every step is indeed towards that. Everything I look at, all the relationships that I have with different people in different parts of the world, every single one is always taking me further forward in my purpose, which is to be real, to be true to the self, to be pure, to be one who stands for what the divine stands for. And in spite of all the knocks and failures and fallings and so on, we become experienced travelers. We know where we're going, we know where we've been, we are grounded, but at the same time, this very high purpose is always there in front, always in the eyes, always in the mind. Always this is that light in the darkness towards which we move, and we do not deviate from that. So I would like us to take some time and sit with these thoughts in meditation. I will speak a few words a little slowly so that you have time in between to feel and think and ponder on on the ideas in meditation. So first of all, let yourself go inside. Go into your being, deep into your heart, gently going in to your mind. All the things on the outside are there, but you're not focused on that. Your attention is towards the inner world, the mind, the heart, the spirit, the soul. The soul is subtle like a flame, dancing in the sky. The soul is deep and quiet, like the bottom of the ocean. Sometimes the soul is so subtle, like a perfume that you catch as you walk at night. I am the spirit, the soul. I am my heart. I go to the deepest space in my being. I am here with myself. At peace. Conscience is clear. My love is not selfish. My heart is nourished. By the realness of my purpose. Within me is a great strength. That I sometimes fail to see. But going deep inside, I touch it. I know it is there. It is with me, with every step that I take. I am going to my origins. I am remembering the divine being beyond. the beautiful one, the compassionate one, the one who is light. I am light. And I go to that light. Into deep peace. The silence and the mystery of the one beyond. I am true to myself. And I am true to that one. I gently let myself return to the everyday world, yet still connected, always aware of my purpose, and grateful for its power to keep me on the right track. Thank you. So I think some of you may have some questions, and so we can have a little time for that.
Okay. Sister, yes. So thank you for really providing us a lot of insights to reevaluate the purpose for our existence. We have questions over here, and I would read the questions, Sister. So the first one goes, these thoughts and meditations give peace to the soul in all wisdom, walks, and religions. The test is when human faces political and conflict of interest, how human would construct, it is worded this way, how human construct a view of the world and so respond.
You know, the way of spiritual practice is always done in circumstances of adversity that require wisdom. And so we have to see deeply and think deeply, because what is power is an important question. I sometimes use the example that if there is a man, maybe the father of a family, and he is having his own rules and his own interests, and maybe he gets angry, and because his child is not behaving the way he wants or living the way he wants, and then he will sometimes castigate his child. He will put limitations. He will try to mold his child and make him be a certain way. He may punish him. He may force him to do something which he doesn't want. But that child is physically and socially weaker than his or her father. And if the father uses his power, or you can say abuses his power against that child, then is that strength or is it weakness? To me, although it is oppressive, and although there is nothing that that child can do to defend the self, and this is a very frequently occurring situation, the process of enduring and surviving and holding to your ideal is actually much stronger than the one who is abusing their power. So this is really the situation and circumstance that many of us find ourselves in. And then what would be the attitude of the divine towards someone in that situation who is in this quandary of how do I live in this circumstance? If I confront, I will be hurt or limited or imprisoned or punished or killed. And so that doesn't really take me anywhere. But I think the power of holding to your truth and resisting the temptation to act out or even to act in, that means to confront the external or to damage oneself. Sometimes people give up and they suicide. Sometimes people feel they have nothing to lose, so they just go and do something against this big power, but they cannot really achieve their goals. And so what I think we have to do is to really hold to what we stand for. And as far as we are able, and some are more able than others, but as far as we are able to live according to what we believe, and wherever the limitations are, we are in a situation where we have to endure. And there is this myth of the one who passes through these huge oppressive situations and yet who transcends and who is transfigured and rises above and beyond that. And that is really to live in a mythic way. I was reminded the other day of the story from the Old Testament of David and Goliath, where Goliath was a very big soldier who was a giant, and this young shepherd boy went to fight him, and he was using a sling. But everybody feels that this David was so small and so weak in comparison with this big figure of Goliath, who was armed and armored and a very powerful fighter. But what they found was that the stones in that particular region were extremely hard. And the sling was not just a little catapult, but a very powerful weapon. But it was not the weapon of hand-to-hand combat. It was a stone that was flung from quite far, but with deadly accuracy. and so he killed the giant. And it went into the scriptures as an example of someone weak succeeding against someone strong. But in fact, when you go into the details, it was found that that weak one was not so weak, and that strong one was really not so strong. It was all to do with appearances. So ponder on this, and you may find your way through this really difficult question of how to function in the circumstances of political oppression, which is very much there in the world in so many places.
So thank you so much, sister. And here's the second question. How to overcome anxiety during this COVID-19 pandemic situation?
Well, I'm also in COVID-19, but I'm not experiencing anxiety. And I think that, why am I not experiencing anxiety? I feel safe for no very good reason. I am attentive to follow the COVID-19 rules and so on. I do not go in crowded places. I am very fortunate that I don't have to. But I think that a lot of people developed anxiety around COVID-19 because they are influenced by the media, which is quite good at making people afraid if you are open to that. And there are many people that I know who have been affected by it and who have even died from it. And yet I still do not feel anxiety. So why? I think that what really are we afraid of that makes us feel anxiety? Is it I'm afraid to get sick? Is it I'm afraid that I will not be able to fulfill my responsibilities if I get sick? Is it that I'm afraid of pain? Is it that I'm afraid to die? What is it really that I am afraid of? And so I think you need to have a look at yourself and really ask yourself, what are you afraid of? And to what extent are you afraid because of what you're hearing in the media or what you're seeing around you? I think someone who is on the front line and who is working in the hospitals with people who are coming in with COVID-19 symptoms, and many of whom will die, and they will die without access to their families, and it is a very, very tragic story. And people on the front line are exposed to it more than anybody else, and they are overworked, and they do not have the medications and the equipment that they need. So they will be on high anxiety, and yet they're doing it. They're doing it because of feeling of love, feeling of responsibility, and they have a lot of courage. And so I don't know your personal situation, whether you are really in danger or whether your anxiety is because of seeing all the other people who are in danger. But I think gauge your anxiety and what you're really afraid of, and try to let your fears come up so that you can sit with them and talk to them and see to what extent they're real and to what extent they are exaggerated. They may be. I do not know your situation. And I think every one of us is dealing with this. And I experienced during these many months that we have been in different parts of the world dealing with lockdown and so on. So I've experienced throughout the whole time that the fact of being regularly meditating and not feeling in danger, quite willing to be held at home and limited. In my spiritual practice anyway, I have a lot of solitary time. Anyway, I work from home, as it were. So it hasn't really made that much difference to me, and I appreciate how much my life has, my practice has prepared me for this. And maybe there are other things that we have to face which are yet to come, but I think everything that's happening in front of us is making us aware that we need to do whatever we can to strengthen ourselves spiritually, and every little thing that we do is going to help us and help us get through this.
So very enlightening and encouraging, sister. So the next question, how do I know whether the voice in my mind is the true voice of my conscience, that is, of my heart?
Well, there are maybe several voices in your mind, and the voice of conscience is really strong and clear to the extent that you follow it. And there are many people who don't follow the voice of conscience. And then the voice of conscience becomes very dim and very quiet, and there's the voice of anxiety that comes in, and the voice of ego that comes in, and the voice of delusion and illusion and fears, and so many voices are coming. And so to really strengthen and be able to hear clearly the voice of conscience, I think that to start listening to it and talking to it, and every time you get in a situation where you could do the right thing, you know what's the right thing to do, but you may be afraid, or it might upset someone. There are things inside you that hold you back, and so take the risk to act on your conscience, and then you will hear it more loudly, and you will know it more accurately, more deeply. Yeah.
All right, the next question, sister, is, let's get it from the Arabic group. So we have one question here. She said that she feels that she doesn't know how to meditate to reach the spiritual awakening. And what are the obstacles that stop us from reaching this spiritual awakening? And in line with that meditation, is it natural to see light or see while you are meditating?
Well, the definition that I give of meditation is to think deeply about what is worth thinking about. And that there are many things really worth thinking about. And in India, they say, think about yourself, that's important, and think about God, that is very important. And as you think about yourself and God and life, you ponder on these things. It's not really about seeing light or getting any magical experience. It's really orienting your mind towards the depth of your being and trying to make contact with that. Orienting your mind towards the divine, who is really beyond this material world. And we need to bring that connection in. We need to have place for God in our life, in our heart, in our motivation, and try to live according to what we know is what the divine wishes for us. And that will correspond with your heart and that will correspond with your conscience. But your wounds may get in the way, your weaknesses may get in the way, and so those things we have to get through and get beyond, because of course they will try to deviate us. But I think don't think that you need to get spiritual awakening or spiritual enlightenment or something like that. It's really quite simple. Just be with yourself and know yourself to be a spiritual being and feel your love for God and God's love for you, because this is your nourishment of your spirit. This is the most important energy that fills you with what you need in order to live your life in the right way.
And this seems to be the last question, sister. How do we truly not listen to our self-doubt and reassure ourselves that we know how to make the right choices? As victims of abuse and trauma, it is hard because we have a low image of ourselves and we truly believe we don't know any better.
Well, this is absolutely right, and this is the human condition. We are wounded spirits, and the wounded spirit is lame and blind and distorted, and yet we need to remember that in essence we are pure and at peace and beings with power, motivated by love, and that when we want to be really true, and you can say, if you say, okay, I've been through trauma and abuse and I've been victimized and I've been violated, but there's nothing to say that I cannot heal. And life is a great teacher, God is a great healer, and we need to look at all those things and look at them that they too have their purpose, even if they're really not good at all, because the journey of going from the wounded, distorted, victimized soul to return to that state where you are healed and pure and close to God is the most wonderful journey and the most empowering thing. So your view of your trauma can also be benefited by looking at them, your traumas, as they too have their purpose, they too have their meaning, and they too are part of the process of getting back to your essential self and getting back to your connection with the divine and returning to your origins.
So thank you so much, sister. So in behalf of everyone with us tonight, I guess we're also full, the heart is so full with gratitude for opening up a certain portion in our life where we can still level up and move on with life with that purpose. So to take with us tonight, 3 things to reevaluate. So this is a chance that we can have that reevaluation of the life's purpose and alignment to this life purpose and always stay connected. And I guess if we have to really take to our heart and seriously what we have listened tonight, it will be a very beautiful journey that we will go through. Really, sister, thank you so much, and we hope that we will see you personally here in Middle East, in Bahrain. Yeah, so from everyone, thank you and thank you, sister.
Thank you very much, and it's been my great pleasure to be with you this evening, and thanks to Sister Awati for her translation. I hope I was not too difficult to translate, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you.